Welcome, 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 everybody. It is Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, April 8th. And now it is time for our weekly series, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, and featuring our very special professor. This gentleman has been doing an incredible job with our series. And all I can say is he's done a thorough job. If you've missed any of this series of Outwitting the Devil, please go back into Unlimited Wisdom, click in the classroom, and it's right there at the top and catch up where we've started from literally the introduction of the book. And now I believe we are now in chapter 12 according to the audio series. So we'll get more of an explanation when our featured guest, who is helping guide us through Outwitting the Devil, shares with us. This gentleman has studied at the University of Wyoming, Northwest College, and Stanford University, and he works at making a difference, teaching people how to create an entrepreneurial lifestyle of fun, profit, freedom, and impact. And his mission, which I so totally love, his mission is to help you create an authentic life of freedom of your choosing on your time. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for our special guest here in this series for Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Give it up for Professor Dana Scranton.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it. It's a wonderful day in paradise, isn't it?
Absolutely, positively.
All righty. Well, we're just going to dive right in and get going. We've got a lot to cover today. So I'm going to very quickly pull up the slide deck as we normally do here. Okay. So this particular session, this episode, is going to cover 4 chapters. They're short chapters. These are the final chapters of the 7 principles of defeating the devil. So today we're going to have book chapters 9, 10, 11, and 12 all rolled inside of chapter 12 audio. And so the first of those is environment, the builder of character, followed by time, harmony, and caution. And so those 4 combined with the prior 3 of them, which is a definite purpose, self-discipline, and oh gosh, I have to go back real quickly and look in definite self-discipline and learning from adversity. Those were the 3. So 3 plus 4 is 7, and that's where we're at. So I want to open this with a little bit of an overview of what you're going to be seeing. So today, the 4 elements, the 4 principles that will be covered are going to be environment, time, harmony, and caution. But I'd ask you to look at these as being synergistic. They are not standalone. They are a balance. And as we get into it, these are short chapters, and he just rips right through them. And maybe that's because this was down towards the end of the book and he was running out of ink in his pen. Or maybe he just decided, okay, you've got all the details. Now we're going to condense it down into these fundamental principles. But whatever the reason, they are very powerful short chapters. They'll go by quick. So I just want to hit you with some ideas here. The environment, of course, is the first one. That's the one that programs you. Your environment is an element of programming. You're surrounded with information and input in all sorts of forms. Working backwards, time, when you add it to environment, is what creates hypnotic rhythm. And of course, as we've discussed, hypnotic rhythm can be positive or it can be negative. The environment and the way you allow that environment to influence you is what determines whether or not that hypnotic rhythm is against you or for you. Then there's harmony. Now, we're going to go into this in just a moment, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but harmony is an element where what happens in the universe, the natural law, is it seeks to drive everything to a harmonious balance. It's not quite right, I don't believe. We'll go into that. And finally, caution. Being cautious with what you allow into your life, the way you think, and the way you move. So that's the 4 elements that we're going to talk about today. Now, prior to this, we covered the other 3 elements, the principles of defeating the devil. And those were definiteness of purpose, self-discipline, and learning from adversity. And those three are also connected. So they are not standalone. Your definiteness of purpose is only beneficial if you have the self-discipline to follow through and do the things that are necessary to bring about that purpose. And along the way, you're going to stumble. You're going to have a failure. You're going to have a misstep. You're going to be disappointed in some way. Knowing how to handle that and turn it into the seed of success is key. And then it goes around. So those three elements combine. And if you take the 7 of these principles and elements, you end up with something rather interesting. They have the ability to swap relative to one another. So on the left, what you have are the 4 principles that we're going to be studying today, nested within the definiteness of purpose, the self-discipline, and learning from adversity principles. Now, all of these things, when you combine them, is the life you create. So inside of that outside ring, if you will, the environment, the caution, the harmony, the time, and you'll have to excuse my AI buddy. He can't get things right sometimes. I give him the idea, he coughs out misspellings, but that's cool. We don't judge. So inside of that outside circle are the 4 principles we're going to talk about today, because those 4 principles are essential to making the outside work. And then conversely, you can flip those around. Inside the very core of this thing we call life is the definiteness of purpose, self-discipline, learning from adversity. This is the foundation on which everything else is built. So once you have that defined and you move forward, then you have to deal with the environment, the time, the harmony, and the caution continuously in order to ensure that your dreams come true. So this is a little bit different approach to understanding what we're going to be studying today and how it all interconnects. So we'll kind of move on forward with a few things. So the environment that we're subject to on a day-to-day basis consists of all the mental, spiritual, and physical forms that influence us as human beings. And so that's what we call environment. The environment isn't, the weather necessarily. It isn't air pollution. It's the things that influence us inside and outside. Now, the environment in which we live is also a collection of energy. If you really want to move it into the physics side, the quantum side, that life is all comprised of energy. We, as humans, have the privilege of choosing how we allow that energy to enter our sphere, to enter us. And so that's a key element here, self-determination. Now, the material on which thoughts are fed comes from this environment that we just talked about. And thought habits are made permanent by hypnotic rhythm. We've studied that in the prior episodes. But the key here is what you allow to enter into your environment. And the most important part of an environment is created with the association of others. That's oftentimes what we view as the big influence in our lives. It's the other people that we deal with, that we invite into our space. All people, regardless of who they are, absorb and take over, either consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously, the thought habits of those that they associate with closely. And we know how that works. I mean, that's how gangs form, that's how cliques form, social groups. But there's some other things to consider. We have free will and we can exercise it. But unless we are very aware of the environment in which we live and the influence it has on us, then that can either flourish or falter as self-determination. Our strengths, our ability to spot what's going on in our lives, unless we look at those in the context of what we're going to allow, that can flourish or falter, that environmental exposure. So we don't want to be unaware of what's going on. Now, finally, let's this particular topic. We've all heard, and we've talked about it in past episodes, that old saying, we become the average of the 5 people with whom we spend the most time. Well, today that's different. And we talked about this, but since we're on the topic of environment, we're going to review it and with a little bit more flair to it. We really become that which evolves from the 5 most emotionally impactful experiences to which we expose ourselves on a frequent and repetitive basis. And today, in the 21st century, these experiences, they are far different than what they were when that quote on top was initially spawned. Okay. Today, these experiences can be passive, they can be active, invited, uninvited, intentional, unintentional, organic, or digital. It's no longer limited to human relationships. So it's not about the 5 guys you gather with down at the bar to slam down a few brews anymore. It's about what's on the screen. I mean, we've got people out there whose personalities and identities have been formed without any human contact at all. It's all on the screen. It's all social media. It's all information sharing, digital, and now it's our AI buddies. So this is something to keep in mind as we move forward because the people that we're going to be dealing with, the lives we're going to try to change, they fit into these categories. Passive, active, invited, uninvited. They have all of these things going on in their lives of which they are not aware. And we are, so we get the opportunity to tell them about that. Now, the next topic we're going to hit today is time. And as Napoleon Hill has said multiple times, no pun intended, time is nature's seasoning influence through which human experience may be ripened into wisdom. Time plus experience and a few other things equal wisdom. Now, here's a little equation I came up with. Knowledge is converted into wisdom through a very simple formula. You take experience, you take learning, which produces knowledge, add time, boom, now you got wisdom. But it's knowing that you had the experience, knowing that you learned something from it, turn that into knowledge that you can share, and you master that with repeated application of that knowledge over time, boom, now you have wisdom. Wisdom is the fruit of maturity. In other words, when you've applied your knowledge enough times to know truth, it becomes wisdom. And wisdom is the ability to relate yourself to nature's laws so as to make them serve you. Now, this goes back up to some of the things we just talked about on the prior page. You have to be aware of the influences in your life so that your wisdom can tell you what you need to do to make that serve you. And here we go with time and hypnotic rhythm again. These things go together. Time and hypnotic rhythm are part and parcel of the same natural force that solidifies thought habits, making it increasingly difficult to break them. Now, we've learned about this in the prior episodes, but it can be in your favor, right? Time will grant permanence to your dominating thoughts and the energy form they possess, positive or negative. You choose. Okay? Nothing transcends harmony and ordered relation, which is the deathless force of all law. It is the essence of the infinite. Now, this is when I'm going to have a little departure from Napoleon's thoughts here. He uses harmony in a term that seeks to say that the natural laws of the universe seek harmony. But the way he describes harmony is not the way that we humans relate to harmony. So I want to define the difference here. And I do this so that it's A, not confusing for people, but also because I think this concept is actually more functional than the harmony concept that Napoleon Hill used. And here it is. Harmony is often defined as a pleasing fit. Different parts work together to create a desirable whole, like the chords of music, the relationships, the harmonious teamwork, the things that make us happy and joyful, the things we see on the television commercials, right? Everybody's happy doing this thing, whatever this thing is, taking one of these blue pill things that they advertise a lot. But then there's resonance. Resonance is defined as an amplified response to match. When frequencies and patterns align, they match. That's like sound, energy, and relationships. What we're really dealing with here when we talk about harmony as we get into this chapter today, think of it as resonance. We resonate with energies in our environment. What we allow to resonate is up here. Our thought patterns, our hypnotic rhythms induce resonance with like energies. This allows us to determine where our thought patterns are. Are we on the positive or negative side? Sometimes people don't know. But when you respond to negative energy, when you get an emotional response from positive energy, this is an indication where your resonant frequency resides. So personally, harmony is okay, but I'm going to stick with resonance. And finally, disorganized minds and bodies produce disorganized thoughts and plans and outcomes. This to me sounds more like resonance than harmony. If you're disorganized, you're going to resonate with all the disorder in your life. And here's a very powerful one because this goes with what I just described. No human being owes another any degree of duty which robs him of his privilege of building his thought habits in a positive environment. In other words, when you get associated with a human being, a social media platform, or any other source of energy that does not contribute to positive thoughts, drop it, delete it, boot it, or at least recognize that when you're in front of it, think differently. Think puppies, flowers, rainbows. Think happy thoughts and let the source of energy, whatever it may be, fade away. And let's see, next to habit of drifting, the most dangerous human trait is lack of caution. Now, this is the last, I think, of the four. Caution. To be cautious in your thoughts, to be cautious in your actions. The drifter always moves without exercising caution. They act first and they think later. Okay, now caution does not mean acting in fear. So, we hear caution, be careful, you might fall off the ledge. No, it's actually the opposite. Non-drifters exercise caution because they are confident and dedicated to their definite major purpose and recognize the importance of practical plans to their ultimate success. So in other words, you're being cautious because you know how it can help others, how it can help you, and you don't want to be rash with your decisions and your actions. Control your thoughts, keep the negative energy away. And finally, the definition of entrepreneurship that I shared with you at the very start of this episode, I modified a little after going through these sections. So it kind of sounds like this now. An entrepreneur is someone who cautiously identifies, assesses, and understands the needs of others so as to connect them with one or more means of fulfilling their needs. That doesn't mean that the entrepreneur is fearful. It means that they want to be cautious. They want to have a degree of certainty as to the outcome of the application of their knowledge and wisdom. So I think you can take that to the bank. And with that said, let's roll. Didn't mean to fire hose you there, but there it is.
Now, that was perfect.
Chapter 12. Environment, Time, Harmony, and Caution. I now have a better understanding of the potentialities of adversity and failure. You may go ahead now with your description of the next of the 7 principles. What is your next principle?
The next principle is environmental influence.
Go ahead and describe the working principle of environmental influences as a determining factor in human destinies.
Environment consists of all the mental, spiritual, and physical forces which affect and influence human beings.
What connection, if any, is there between environmental influences and hypnotic rhythm?
Hypnotic rhythm solidifies and makes permanent the thought habits of human beings. Thought habits are stimulated by environmental influences. In other words, the material on which thoughts are fed comes from one's environment. Thought habits are made permanent by hypnotic rhythm.
What is the most important part of one's environment, the part which determines, more than all others, whether an individual makes positive or negative use of his mind?
The most important part of one's environment is that created by his association with others. All people absorb and take over, either consciously or unconsciously, the thought habits of those with whom they associate closely.
Do you mean by this that constant association with a person whose thought habits are negative influences one to form negative thought habits?
Yes. The law of hypnotic rhythm forces every human being to form thought habits which harmonize with the dominating influences of his environment, particularly that part of his environment created by his association with other minds.
Then it is important that one select one's close associates with great care.
Yes. One's intimate associate should be chosen with as much care as one chooses the food with which he feeds his body, with the object always of associating with people whose dominating thoughts are positive, friendly, and harmonious.
Which class of associates has the greatest influence upon one?
One's partner in marriage and in the home, and one's associates in his occupation. After that come close friends and acquaintances. Casual acquaintances and strangers have but little influence on one.
The material on which thoughts are fed come from one's environment. Thought habits are made permanent by hypnotic rhythm. Have you ever felt your attitude or mood become negative just by being in the presence of someone negative? Was it your spouse, child, or business partner? Hill suggests that you need to interject thoughts that are positive, friendly, and harmonious, not only to counteract those negative thoughts, but also to influence that person into a more positive space. If it is your business partner, evaluate if the relationship is one you want to save, or make the decision to move away from the partner's negativity.
Why does one's partner in marriage have so great an influence upon one's mind?
Because the relationship of marriage brings people under the influence of spiritual forces of such weight that they become dominating forces of the mind.
How may environmental influences be used to break the grip of hypnotic rhythm?
All influences which establish thought habits are given permanency through the law of hypnotic rhythm. One may change the influences of his environment so that the dominating influences are either positive or negative, and the law of hypnotic rhythm will make them permanent unless they are changed through one's habits of thought.
Stating this truth in another way, one may submit himself to any environmental influence desired, whether positive or negative, and the law of hypnotic rhythm will make the influence permanent when it assumes the magnitude of thought habit. Is that the way the law works?
That is correct. Be careful of all forces which inspire thought. Those are the forces which constitute environment and determine the nature of one's earthly destiny.
What class of people controls their environmental influences?
The non-drifters. All who are victims of the habit of drifting forfeit their power to choose their own environment. They become the victims of every negative influence of their environment.
Is there no way out for the drifter? Is there no method by which he may submit himself to the influence of a positive environment?
Yes, there is a way out for drifters. They can stop drifting, take possession of their own minds, and choose an environment which inspires positive thought. This they may accomplish through definiteness of purpose.
Is that all there is to the act of eliminating the habit of drifting? Is the habit only a state of mind?
Drifting is nothing but a negative state of mind, a state of mind conspicuous by its emptiness of purpose.
What effective procedure may one follow in establishing an environment most helpful in developing and maintaining positive thought habits?
The most effective of all environments is that which may be created by a friendly alliance of a group of people who will obligate themselves to assist one another in achieving the object of some definite purpose. This sort of an alliance is known as a mastermind. Through its operation, one may associate himself with carefully chosen individuals, each of whom brings to the alliance some knowledge, experience, education, plan, or idea suited to his needs in carrying out the object of his definite purpose. The most successful leaders in all walks of life avail themselves of this sort of made-to-order environmental influence. Outstanding achievement is impossible without the friendly cooperation of others. Stating the truth in another way, successful people must control their environment, thereby ensuring themselves against the influence of a negative environment.
What of people whose duty to relatives makes it impossible for them to avoid the influence of a negative environment?
No human being owes another any degree of duty which robs him of his privilege of building his thought habits in a positive environment. On the other hand, every human being is duty-bound to himself to remove from his environment every influence which even remotely tends to develop negative thought habits.
Isn't this a cold-blooded philosophy?
Only the strong survive. No one can be strong without removing himself from all influences which develop negative thought habits. Negative thought habits result in the loss of the privilege of self-determination, no matter what or who may cause those habits. Positive thought habits may be controlled by the individual and made to serve his aims and purposes. Negative thought habits control the individual and deprive him of the privilege of self-determination.
I deduce from all you have said that those who control the environmental influences out of which their thought habits are built are masters of their earthly destinies, and that all others are mastered by earthly destinies. Is that stating the matter correctly?
Perfectly stated.
What establishes one's thought habits?
All habits are established because of inherent or acquired desires, or motives. That is, habits are begun as the result of some form of definite desire.
What takes place in the physical brain while one is forming thought habits?
Desires are organized impulses of energy, called thoughts. Desires that are mixed with emotional feeling magnetize the brain cells in which they are stored and prepare those cells to be taken over and directed by the law of hypnotic rhythm. When any thought appears in the brain or is created there, and is mixed with keen emotional feeling of desire, the law of hypnotic rhythm begins at once to translate it into its physical counterpart. Dominating thoughts, which are acted upon first by the law of hypnotic rhythm, are those with which are mixed the strongest desires and the most intense feelings. Thought habits are established by the repetition of the same thoughts.
What are the most impelling basic motives or desires which inspire thought action?
The 10 most common motives, those which inspire most of one's physical action, are these: the desire for sex expression and love, the desire for physical food, the desire for spiritual, mental, and physical self-expression, the desire for perpetuation of life after death, the desire for power over others, the desire for material wealth, the desire for knowledge, the desire to imitate others, the desire to excel others, the 7 basic fears. These are the dominating motives which inspire the majority of all human endeavors.
What about the negative desires, such as greed, envy, avarice, jealousy, anger? Are these not expressed more often than any of the positive desires?
All negative desires are nothing but frustrations of positive desires. They are inspired by some form of defeat, failure, or neglect by human beings to adapt themselves to nature's laws in a positive way.
That's a new slant on the subject of negative thoughts. If I correctly understand what you have said, all negative thoughts are inspired by one's neglect or failure to adapt oneself harmoniously to nature's laws. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct. Nature will not tolerate idleness or vacuums of any sort. All space must be and is filled with something. Everything in existence, of both a physical and a spiritual nature, must be and is constantly in motion. The human brain is no exception. It was created to receive, organize, specialize, and express the power of thought. When the individual does not use the brain for the expression of positive, creative thoughts, nature fills the vacuum by forcing the brain to act upon negative thoughts. There can be no idleness in the brain. Understand this principle, and you will come into a new and important understanding of the part environmental influences take in the lives of human beings. You will better understand also how the law of hypnotic rhythm operates, it being the law which keeps everything and everyone constantly moving through some form of expression of either negative or positive principles. Nature is not interested in morals as such. She is not interested in right and wrong. She is not interested in justice and injustice. She is interested only in forcing everything to express action according to its nature.
Nature will not tolerate idleness or vacuums of any sort. All space must be and is filled with something. When the individual does not use the brain for the expression of positive, creative thoughts, nature fills the vacuum by forcing the brain to act upon negative thoughts. I find this so true, particularly when I think of children who have too much idle time on their hands. Don Green, CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, remembers, as young people, we were constantly kept busy with the admonition that idleness was the devil's workshop. Interesting parallel, don't you think?
That is an enlightening interpretation of nature's ways. To whom may I turn for corroboration of your claims?
To men of science, to the philosophers, to all accurate thinkers. Lastly, to the physical manifestations of nature herself. Nature has no such thing as dead matter. Every atom of matter is constantly in a state of motion. All energy is constantly in motion. There are no dead voids anywhere. Time and space are literally manifestations of motion of such swiftness that it cannot be measured by human beings.
Alas, one is forced to the conclusion from what you say that the sources of dependable knowledge are shockingly limited.
The developed sources of knowledge are limited. Every normal adult human brain is a potential gateway to all the knowledge there is throughout the universes. Every normal adult brain has within its mechanism the possibility of direct communication with infinite intelligence, wherein exists all the knowledge that is or can ever be.
Your statement leads me to believe that human beings may become all they have attributed to what they call God. Is that what you mean?
Through the law of evolution, the human brain is being perfected to communicate at will with infinite intelligence. The perfection will come through organized development of the brain, through its adaptation to nature's laws. Time is the factor which will bring perfection.
What causes cycles of recurring events such as epidemics of disease, business depressions, wars, and crime waves?
All such epidemics in which great numbers of people are similarly affected are caused by the law of hypnotic rhythm, through which nature consolidates thoughts of a similar nature and causes those thoughts to be expressed through mass action.
Then the Great Depression was put into motion because great numbers of people were influenced to release thoughts of fear. Is that correct?
Perfectly. Millions of people were endeavoring to get something for nothing through stock gambling. When they suddenly discovered they had gotten nothing for something, they became frightened, rushed to their banks to draw out their balances, and the panic was on. Through mass thought of millions of minds, all thinking in terms of fear of poverty, the depression was prolonged over a period of years.
The current economic turmoil in the United States and throughout the world was put into motion in a similar fashion. Millions were endeavoring to get something for nothing through real estate, no money down deals, subprime mortgages, and valuation bubbles, as well as the financial markets. When everything started to collapse, they became frightened, and the panic was on once again. By changing the thoughts of these millions from fear back to focus on fundamentally sound financial principles, can we stabilize the economy? Napoleon Hill's philosophy can show us the way. The choice is ours.
From what you say, I deduce that nature consolidates the dominating thoughts of people and expresses these thoughts through some form of mass action, such as business depressions, business booms, and so on. Is that correct?
You have the right idea.
Let us now take up the next of the 7 principles. Go ahead and describe it.
The next principle is time, the 4th dimension.
What relationship is there between time and the operation of the law of hypnotic rhythm?
Time is the law of hypnotic rhythm. The lapse of time required to give permanency to thought habits depends upon the object and the nature of the thoughts.
But I understood you to say that the only enduring thing in nature is change. If that is true, then time is constantly changing, rearranging, and recombining all things, including one's thought habits. How then could the law of hypnotic rhythm give permanency to one's thought habits?
Time divides all thought habits into 2 classes, negative thoughts and positive thoughts. One's individual thoughts are, of course, constantly changing and being recombined to suit the individual's desires. But thoughts do not change from negative to positive or vice versa, except through voluntary effort on the part of the individual. Time penalizes the individual for all negative thoughts and rewards him for all positive thoughts, according to the nature and purpose of the thoughts. If one's dominating thoughts are negative, Time penalizes the individual by building in his mind the habit of negative thinking, and then proceeds to solidify this habit into permanency every second of its existence. Positive thoughts are, likewise, woven by time into permanent habits. The term permanency, of course, refers to the natural life of the individual. In the strict sense of the term, nothing is permanent. Time converts thought habits into what might be called permanency during the life of the individual.
Now I have a better understanding of how time works. What other characteristics has time in connection with the earthly destiny of human beings?
Time is nature's seasoning influence through which human experience may be ripened into wisdom. People are not born with wisdom, but they are born with the capacity to think, and they may, through the lapse of time, think their way into wisdom.
People are not born with wisdom, but they are born with the capacity to think, and they may, through the lapse of time, think their way into wisdom. I find this one of the most profound statements in the entire book. By using our ability to think and analyzing our experiences in life, whether successes or failures, we can gain wisdom. Can it actually be that simple?
Do youths ever possess wisdom?
Only in very elementary matters. Wisdom comes only through the lapse of time. It cannot be inherited, and it cannot be imparted from one person to another except through the lapse of time.
Does the lapse of time force an individual to acquire wisdom?
No. Wisdom comes only to non-drifters who form positive thought habits as a dominating force in their lives. Drifters and those whose dominating thoughts are negative never acquire wisdom except of a very elementary nature.
From what you say, I infer that time is the friend of the person who trains his mind to follow positive thought habits and the enemy of the person who drifts into negative thought habits. Is that correct?
That is precisely true. All people can be classified as drifters and non-drifters. Drifters are always at the mercy of the non-drifters, and time makes this relationship permanent.
Do you mean that if I drift along through life without definite aim or purpose, the non-drifter may become my master, and time only serves to give the non-drifter a stronger and more permanent grip upon me?
That is stating the truth exactly.
Wisdom comes only to non-drifters who form positive thought habits as a dominating force in their lives. Again, I am forced to think about our children. With so much negativity around us due to terrorism and financial strife, what is going to be the long-term impact on our children? We must envelop our children in positive experiences in order to generate positive thoughts in their minds.
What is wisdom?
Wisdom is the ability to relate yourself to nature's laws so as to make them serve you, and the ability to relate yourself to other people so as to gain their harmonious, willing cooperation in helping you to make life yield whatever you demand of it.
Then accumulated knowledge is not wisdom.
Great heavens, no. If knowledge were wisdom, the achievements of science would not have been converted into implements of destruction.
What is needed to convert knowledge into wisdom?
Time, plus the desire for wisdom. Wisdom is never thrust upon one. It is acquired, if at all, by positive thinking, through voluntary effort.
Is it safe for all people to have knowledge?
It is never safe for anyone to have extensive knowledge without wisdom.
What is the age at which most people who acquire wisdom begin to acquire it?
The majority of people who acquire wisdom do so after they have passed the age of 40. Prior to that time, the majority of people are too busy gathering knowledge and organizing it into plans to spend any effort seeking wisdom.
What circumstance of life is most apt to lead one to acquire wisdom?
Adversity and failure. These are nature's universal languages through which she imparts wisdom to those who are ready to receive it.
Do adversity and failure always bring wisdom?
No, only to those who are ready for wisdom and have voluntarily sought it.
What determines one's readiness to receive wisdom?
Time and the nature of one's thought habits.
Is newly acquired knowledge the same as time-tested knowledge?
No. Knowledge tested through the lapse of time always is superior to that which has been newly acquired. Time gives to knowledge definiteness in both quality and quantity, and dependability. One can never be sure of knowledge that has not been tested.
What is dependable knowledge?
It is knowledge which harmonizes with natural law, which means that it is based upon positive thought.
Does time modify and alter the values of knowledge?
Yes, time modifies and alters all values. That which is accurate knowledge today may become null and void tomorrow because of time's rearrangement of facts and values. Time modifies all human relationships for better or for worse, depending upon the policy through which people relate themselves to one another. In the realm of thought, there is a time when it is proper to sow the seeds of thought, and there is a proper time to reap the harvest of those thoughts, the same as there is a time to sow and a time to reap from the soil of the earth. Without the proper measurement of time between the sowing and the reaping, nature modifies or withholds the rewards of the sowing.
Go ahead now and describe the last two of the 7 principles.
The next principle is harmony. Throughout nature, one may find evidences that all natural law moves in an orderly manner, through the law of harmony. Through the operation of this law, nature forces everything within the range of a given environment to become harmoniously related. Understand this truth, and you will catch a new and a more intriguing vision of the power of environment. You will understand why association with negative minds is fatal to those seeking self-determination.
Do you mean that nature voluntarily forces human beings to harmonize with the influences of their environment?
Yes, that is true. The law of hypnotic rhythm forces upon every living thing the dominating influences of the environment in which it exists.
If nature forces human beings to take on the nature of the environment in which they live, what means of escape are available to people who find themselves in an environment of poverty and failure but desire to escape?
They must change their environment or remain poverty-stricken. Nature permits no one to escape the influences of his environment. However, nature, in her abundance of wisdom, has given to every normal human being the privilege of establishing his own mental, spiritual, and physical environment. But once he establishes it, he must become a part of it. This is the inexorable working of the law of harmony.
In a business association, for example, who establishes the dominating influence that determines the rhythm of the environment?
The individual or individuals who think and act with definiteness of purpose.
Is it as simple as that?
Yes. Definiteness of purpose is the starting point from which an individual may establish his own environment.
I do not seem to follow your reasoning. The entire world is torn with warfare and business depressions and other forms of strife which represent about everything except harmony. Nature does not seem to be forcing people to harmonize with one another. How do you explain this inconsistency?
There is no inconsistency. The dominating influences of the world are, as you say, negative. Very well, nature is forcing human beings to harmonize with the dominating influences of the world environment.
As in Hill's day, there seems to be little harmony in our world today. When you think of the current economy, the natural disasters, the military conflicts, the human devastation from disease and hunger, does harmony seem even attainable? Hill would say yes, even in the face of the horrible conditions of his time. While you and I may not be in control of harmony in our world, we can create harmony in our homes.
Manifestations of harmony may be either positive or negative. For example, a group of men in prison may, and they generally do, think and act in a negative manner. But nature sees to it that the dominating influence of the prison is impressed upon every individual in it. A group of poverty-stricken people in a tenement house may fight among themselves and apparently resist all forms of harmony. But nature forces each of them to become a part of the dominating influence of the house in which they live. Harmony, in the sense it is here used, means that nature relates everything throughout the universe to every other thing of a similar nature. Negative influences are forced into association with one another, no matter where they may be. Positive influences are just as definitely forced into association with one another.
I'm beginning to see why successful business leaders are so careful in the choice of their business associates. Men who succeed in any calling usually establish their own environment by surrounding themselves with people who think and act in terms of success. Is that the idea?
That is the idea exactly. Observe, with profit, that the one thing all successful men insist upon is harmony among their business associates. Another trait of successful people is that they move with definiteness of purpose and insist upon their associates doing the same. Understand these two truths, and you understand the major difference between a Henry Ford and a day laborer.
So the principle of harmony is a benefit to us when we surround ourselves with other successful people. Think of the people you work with. Are they supporting you or holding you back?
Now, tell me about the last of the 7 principles.
The last principle is caution. Next to the habit of drifting, the most dangerous human trait is the lack of caution. People drift into all sorts of hazardous circumstances because they do not exercise caution by planning the moves they make. The drifter always moves without exercising caution. He acts first and thinks later, if at all. He does not choose his friends. He drifts along and allows people to attach themselves to him on their own terms. He does not choose an occupation. He drifts through school and is glad to get the first job that will give him food and clothing. He invites people to cheat him at trade by neglecting to inform himself of the rules of trade. He invites illness by neglecting to inform himself of the rules of sound health. He invites poverty by neglecting to protect himself against the environmental influences of the poverty-stricken. He invites failure at every step he takes by neglecting to exercise the caution to observe what causes people to fail. He invites fear in all its forms by his lack of caution in examining the causes of fear. He fails in marriage because he neglects to use caution in his choice of a mate, and he uses still less caution in his methods of relating himself to her after marriage. He loses his friends or converts them into enemies by his lack of caution in relating himself to them on the proper basis.
Are all people lacking in caution?
No, only those who have acquired the habit of drifting. The non-drifter always uses caution. He carefully thinks his plans through before he begins them. He makes allowances for the human frailties of his associates and plans ahead to bridge them. If he sends a messenger on an important mission, he sends someone else to make sure the messenger does not neglect his mission. Then he checks on both of them to be sure his wishes have been fulfilled. He takes nothing for granted where caution provides a way to ensure his success.
Isn't overcaution as detrimental as lack of caution?
There is no such thing as overcaution. What you call overcaution is an expression of fear. Fear and caution are two entirely different things.
Don't people mistake fear for overcaution?
Yes, that does sometimes happen. But the majority of people create for themselves far more disastrous hazards by total lack of the habit of caution than by overcaution.
In what way may caution be used most advantageously?
In the selection of one's associates and in one's method of relating oneself to associates. The reason for this is obvious. One's associates constitute the most important part of one's environment, and environmental influences determine whether one forms the habit of drifting or becomes a non-drifter. The person who exercises due caution in the choice of associates never allows himself to be closely associated with any person who does not bring to him, through the association, some definite mental, spiritual, or economic benefit.
Isn't that method of choosing associates selfish?
It is sensible and leads to self-determination. It is the desire of every normal person to find material success and happiness. Nothing contributes more to one's success and happiness than carefully chosen associates. Caution in the selection of associates becomes, therefore, the duty of every person who wishes to become happy and successful. The drifter allows his closest associates to attach themselves to him on their own terms. The non-drifter carefully selects his associates and allows no one to become closely associated with him unless that person contributes some form of helpful influence or bestows some definite benefit.
It never occurred to me that caution in the selection of friends had so definite a bearing on one's success or failure. Do all successful people exercise caution in the selection of all their associates, whether in business, social, or professional relationships?
Without the exercise of caution in the choice of all associates, no one may be certain of success in any calling. On the other hand, lack of exercise of caution brings almost certain defeat in whatever one undertakes.
Do you have a hard time saying no to people? This chapter makes you realize that using caution in selecting your associates and learning to say no more often may speed you on your path to success.
Okay, well, what did you think of that?
Wow.
You packed a whole lot of information into a very short 4 chapters, but it's just absolutely mind-blowing how the relevance has sustained over nearly a century. Isn't that something? Now, the one thing that dawned on me go back to the Science of Getting Rich days, when Wallace Wattles, he implored people to keep their objectives in their mind at all times. That movie of success. What did it look and feel like to be successful? To keep it in your mind. Well, that's what's being talked about here as well. When you open up your mind to let things in that aren't part of that big vision, well, it fills the void. And, once that negativity has a chance to get traction, well, now you're kind of having to throttle your way out of a mud puddle,
Right.
so to speak. So yeah, that's some powerful and synergistic stuff there. Now, just to give you a little preview to next time, it'll be our last episode because there's only two things left to review. One of them is the summary, which is in the book, but I think hearing the summary in this form is important. But then there's the afterword that is not in the book, and that's by Michael Beckworth. And so that's on the audio. And he goes through and he kind of summarizes it in the context of when the book was published, 2011, 2012, and 2020s, whenever he actually fit that into the audio book. But it's got some very interesting things in it. But that said, are there any comments, any questions, any thoughts to share?
All right. Well, just as I had posted in the chat, let's go ahead and open up. If you have a share or a question, please feel free to do so. Go ahead and put your cursor in the middle of the screen where you see these faces. On the bottom, one of those buttons is raise hand. Click on that and we'll call on you and the order in which we receive you. Also, if you want to just share in the chat, that's fine. We'll go ahead and mention that or ask the question on your behalf. So just what an incredible way to wrap up this series and this whole video series and this book. I mean, I think everybody can honestly say that everyone who's been here have been on the edge of their seat, taking in and learning all about what this book is about and how Napoleon Hill, I mean, not just for Think and Grow Rich, but to this book, Outwitting the Devil, even considering when these books were written, are still are still useful in today's society.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we've done in this series, hopefully, is to take the concepts that he outlined in his book that to the layman, to somebody just never exposed to the book, they would look at it and think it's weird. If they looked at the title of the book, they think, well, that must be some religious book. But in this time together, in this mastermind, what we've actually done, at least I hope we've done, is we've taken the concepts from this book written way back in the 20s and 30s, and we've advanced them to the point today where we have enough of a comprehension and understanding to take this knowledge and wisdom, if you will, and apply it. Apply it at a time when it's needed more than ever. It hasn't changed, and that's what's very interesting. Napoleon Hill had some serious insights back then. Now, whether those were pure genius, which I don't believe, or they were downloaded to him, to his other self from the infinite intelligence, that's what I believe happened. And
I do too.
This has happened through history, where an individual has been chosen to speak a truth that is timeless. And he may not be a deity like Jesus, but this book and the way it came forward is filled with truths. And we now have the opportunity to carry those forward. Now, the other thing I'd share with you is the resonance concept that I brought forth. That is boundless, as is the harmonious concept that he used. We don't have any boundaries on that today because of the technology that we're sitting in front of. How we choose to influence the world is boundless. And if you make that a mission, if you keep that on the fore of your mind, to keep pushing out the negativity, and you look for opportunities to resonate positively with, 8 billion people, there is countless opportunities to make a difference. And if nothing else, that's what this book has taught us. And it's given us the mechanisms It's given us the means to understand how to communicate that, what we're looking to change, how we're looking to help people, the pitfalls and the potholes that are all around us, but we now know how to sidestep them, and we know how to teach others to do the same. So, it's this book is just loaded with gotchas.
Yeah. Anybody got anything to say? Terry?
Robert, go ahead and share your spot or part of this, please.
Yeah, when I listened to this, it's one of the biggest things that I had to admit to myself when I first started getting plugged into personal development is this constant thought that somehow I was immune from all this. You know what I mean? So a lot of people will go, I can watch whatever I want. I can listen to whatever I want. I'm immune to all this, and including the environment that you're in, including the company that you have. And I believe that a lot of people sabotage themselves because they're just not willing to admit that if they're not using purpose and intention and what their thoughts and direction that they're going, that they don't realize that they're on automatic pilot. They don't realize that the programming around them, the people that are around them. I mean, even to this day, people constantly say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I say the same things my parents said." And you can get around a group of people and they can do something. It's that whole, I know, remember all of you probably seen me do this video a couple of times, but it's, the first follower, you know what I mean? Where that video just shows this guy that's dancing to the music and he's just dancing like nobody's business. And everyone around him is laughing at him. And they were calling him the lone nut, right? So we see the lone nut out there on this hill dancing like crazy. And they're saying the lone nut is never the person that can really make any momentum happen. It's the first follower. So they just watched this video of this guy acting like a nut and everyone's laughing at him. And then all of a sudden it takes the first follower. And when that person shows up, then all of a sudden there's this weirdness that happens, which, wow, if there's two of them, are they both nuts? Like what made the first follower follow the first nut, right? And it gets everyone to do that second guessing. And then when the next three show up, then you get to see how humans react. It's like now everyone that was sitting down laughing has FOMO, fear of missing out. Maybe maybe they know what's going on and I'm the one that looks stupid for not getting involved. And what my biggest thing is, I would say to everyone, and even to Dana, I'd love your input on this, is this until I had the concept that I wasn't immune from this. You know what I mean? That I wasn't immune, like people can do the doom scrolling or they can do whatever they want and they just think that everything's okay. They convince themselves that everything's fine. They just don't know why they repeat the same things every day. And they also compete something that I think is very awful. And that's when you do things and you get stuck in that hypnotic rhythm. And then all of a sudden, now you're upset at yourself. Now here comes the guilt and shame. You know what I mean? Now it's like you're beating yourself up. I blew off another day. I was supposed to get this, and this stuff done, and I told myself, and now you're procrastinating, and now you're a worthless, lazy piece of garbage, right? So now you get into this whole thing, which you don't realize is part of the hypnotic rhythm. Like
Yep.
it's like when you put things off and you procrastinate, that's not the one day that you don't beat up yourself. No, that's coming. That's I know a lot of you probably have done this, but the first download that I just had here is when you can start singing the first sentences of the next song that you know that's on the album, that you know that's on the track, right? You're just listening to it and it's ending, and all of a sudden your mind goes, "Hey, I know what song's next," and it starts playing it. And we can all look at ourselves as going like, "Wow, how smart am I that I knew which record was?" Now that's a program running.
Yeah.
So when I knew when I knew that there was certain things on a positive level, like prayer and meditation and me doing certain things where I'm learning something new every day. As soon as I started realizing that I could put something in place of that and then create that into a rhythmic habit, that's when things really started. And again, the book, The Greatest Miracle in the World, I don't ever remember ever doing anything consistently on a daily basis until that book said, read this chapter 9, the God Memorandum, every night before you go to bed. That's the first time that I ever deliberately, with intent, did something on a positive level. Because most of it's like, hey, you're done with work. What are you doing? You're done with work. You go have a beer with the guys, and then you make fun of each other. That's what you do, right? It is like, I don't know. Is that what you're supposed to do? So I'd like your input on that, Dana. That's what I got out of the environment, the time, the harmony, and even the caution, where, you know, um, there was a time in my life where there wasn't any caution.
Mhm.
What my mentor called delayed windshield wipers.
Yeah.
Is going, listen, you can have a thought and have three or four thoughts after that before opening your mouth or moving into a direction.
Yeah.
It's like, what would happen if this happened, and how would that affect this group of people? And it's like, I don't want that effect on that group of people. And like they said in this part was, you're constantly, you can't say no to anybody.
Hmm. Yep. Well, I think one of the concepts that is powerful there is awareness. We've talked about that in a prior episode. Awareness only works if you have an objective in mind that you're trying to achieve. So in other words, if
Wow,
what you want
strong.
is to fill your mind with positive thoughts, you are aware of that as your objective. Then as information and energy comes at you, that awareness allows you to make that decision. And the decision is, I'm not going to participate in that feeling. But as a world, I mean, we're all dealing with that on a constant basis. We've got so many things coming at us and we react to all these things. And the reaction, I read some time ago that you've got 1/4 of a second is the reaction window. And
Wow.
if you can't stop that reaction in 1/4 of a second, it's going to happen on you.
Yeah.
Well, how do you stop that? Well, you stop it by practicing a habit to create a hypnotic rhythm of constantly thinking positive. But when you think positive with intention, what it is that I'm trying to achieve today, there's that plan. You get up in the morning with an intention of what you're going to do today, and you fill your mind with that so that you can insulate yourself and put
Right.
a cocoon around you. And then this helps to suppress the constant flow of negativity and the reaction that you give to it. Because as soon as you react to something, as opposed to respond, and I think we all know the difference between the two, you have just planted another seed of negativity, another hypnotic rhythm seed that's going to grow into an orchard that you're just going to be for the rest of your life now and in the hereafter picking rotten apples.
Yep.
You
Yep.
got an orchard full of rotten apples. So, and the way you get around that, it's just like what you say, you fill your mind with things that you do on a habitual basis that are positive. The trick is getting into that rhythm.
Right.
And And I read some time ago that one of the things you can do is you have to have a positive outcome, a reason, a feeling, something that you're looking for. And that comes down to having a definite purpose. And then I think 3 or 4 episodes ago, we talked about micro wins,
Yeah.
and if every day you seek to have one or more micro wins and you celebrate every little win, like I actually picked up my underwear off the bathroom floor.
You talked about cleaning something up in your garage, that you're going to just clean up this area.
Yeah, clean up that little part of the garage over there, clean up the toolkit, go in and actually wipe the dashboard of your car. Everything is a micro win. And when you start getting in the habit of seeking micro wins, then you set up a hypnotic rhythm. And we're all doing it. That's what I'm trying to do to, overcome the project overwhelm. I'm
Right.
just I'm just doing micro wins. Micro wins are a way of keeping your mind focused on what am I going to win at next? What is the next positive thing I can do? Because it kind of gives you a little, it's not a rush, but it's that little feeling of, damn.
What you're doing is you're actually, whatever that endorphin stuff that drops to us that gets us this little excitement of getting likes
Yeah,
or something on a post, we're actually dopamine or whatever. We're
yeah,
actually creating that by, I've talked to Coach Bob and a lot of people, Melody, I remember, is that not only getting micro wins, but also you celebrating those micro wins.
yep.
And one of the biggest disciplines that I've learned is I state things out loud with my mouth. It's like I haven't been locked up yet, but it's that constant thing where, you know, if you ask a person the last time that they looked at themselves in the mirror and try to do your best to not look at anything but your eyes and just say the simple words, I'm proud of you. I love you. I tell people if you have to fire yourself, then fire yourself and then go back in and rehire yourself. But these little things that I've been taught by mentors is saying it out of my mouth when I'm trying to make a quick, fast decision. I say with my mouth, is this getting me closer to what I want in my life?
Mhm.
Just is this getting me closer? Because it's funny when you ask your mind questions, your mind immediately goes into a phase of solution. It just does. It's like, am I going the right direction? Do I need to go left or do I need to go right? And so, and it gets your mind into the solution part of it. So, man, great stuff, Dana. This is this what this whole mastermind has done is again make people aware of things that they weren't aware of. All the stuff that we talked about, there's things that I've heard before, but still to bring them up and asking yourself, am I in a hypnotic rhythm? Is there something that's a hypnotic rhythm? Boy, that would be difficult for people to go, no, I don't have any of that in my life because that's the wrong answer. Because if you really paid attention to, you need to create positive hypnotic rhythms. See, you don't say I'm habitless.
That's right.
I'm really, really proud of Eric. Eric, me and him have talks and known each other for years. And he just made the attention that he was going to go on and pray for people online every day. He's just going to do it. And I just told him, I said, listen, that's part of your heart. Just do that. Then it was amazing where all of a sudden had a guy send him a message and he said, check out your PayPal. And it was a large sum of money. And Eric's like going, what is this for? And he says, I was told to send it to you.
That's so cool.
And there's no way that would have happened to Eric if he wouldn't have thrown caution to the wind and goes, I do go online, I do a video and I'm praying for people, but no one said anything, no one liked it, no one made any comment, no one shared it. How often do we all get that? And so I just said, Eric, if this is the thing that you do for people, just keep doing it. And you'll get to a place where you won't think about it anymore. It's just something that you do. And then the next part of hypnotic rhythm you get is, I don't care if no one comments. I know this said something to someone. And if it's not today, it's going to be in the future.
Right, and it has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then you just keep doing this. And then if someone reached out and said, well, Eric, how do you make money? And Eric goes, well, I make money by doing a couple of videos as my heart feels like it, just praying for people. And people go, that ain't going to work. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, Eric. I just
Thank
wanted to
you.
bring that. You bet.
No, you're good. Thank you so much.
You bet. Love and appreciate you.
You
So
too.
Dana, anything else to close it out? Again, you don't have anything, or anybody else has anything?
Nope, we're clear.
But we do have one more episode, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that'll be the final one, and we'll call her good then. But I think there's some good information there, and we can have a final discussion and kind of round table the thing and go on from there.
I'm excited to hear more wisdom, and I'm sad that we're not continuing to do something else.
We'll figure out something.
Yeah, we will. I really appreciate it. So, Craig, I'll let you close it out. Again, Dana, I love and appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Right back at you, brother.
Wow. I agree, Robert. I can't believe we've got only one more week of this, and very excited, Dana, to wrap this whole thing up with you. And also, I'm going to project as well. Let's look forward to another amazing video series like this. We really appreciate you. And we definitely appreciate each and every one of you for joining us. Now, if you want to save some of the things in the chat, there's a few things. Go ahead and click the three dots in the meeting chat and then click Save Chat. It'll download to your computer as we conclude today. Just big shout out, Terry, Robert, Dana, incredible stuff today. Eric, thank you for sharing and congratulations. That is awesome to hear. What a great share. And we really appreciate the fact that you have taken time out of your busy schedule to join us here on our video series, Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, featuring our professor, Dana Scranton. We'll be here next week, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, next Wednesday, for our final chapter and wrap up of this amazing series. So we love and appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to join us. Until next time, please be good to yourselves. Be cash. Bye-bye. I'm going to go ahead and unmute so we can all say so long and have a wonderful Wednesday.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
y'all.
Sarah,
Wonderful.
Dustin,
Thank you,
Melody,
Dana. Thank you.
Fahad. See you, Faith.
Everyone.
Always beautiful to see you. Hi, Eric.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael and
Bless y'all.
Angela. ZJ Jackman and Dana Scranton. Love and appreciate you guys. Bye.
Okay, see you out there.